Hey everybody, this is Thomas Andrick, your voice for the PPC in Whitby. So we're one day after the 1 Million March for Children protest that was held on September 20th, 2023. And I was at the protest being held in Whitby. That was held in front of the Durham District School Board headquarters. And I have to say, despite the rhetoric that was used leading up to the protest for at least a week, all the hate-filled messaging towards the protesters, the organizers, those ones who were taking part, all the lies that were being told of who we are and what kind of people we are. And we're used to that already, being called hateful, being called fascist, being called ultra right wing, whatever that is. Despite of all that, massive turnout, a much better turnout than I thought there would be. 90% for the protest, 10% against the protest. 90% of the people who were there were for parental rights, were protesting for the protection of children in schools and against the secrecy that is being upheld within the schools. So teachers and educators telling children to keep things a secret from their parents and telling them not to tell them what's going on in the schools, etc., etc., and protesting against the sexual indoctrination of minors. It was incredible to see all types of different people from different faiths, different religions, different ethnic backgrounds and different cultures, etc., all coming together and protesting for one cause. We know what this protest was. It had nothing to do with anti-trans or anti-minority or wherever the rhetoric was. Absolutely laughable and a joke. We know what's going on. Children are being used as pawns. Children are being used for state propaganda. Children are being used to ensure that they become good little citizens of the state, being indoctrinated into this ridiculous ideology that is completely Marxist. We've seen the Trudeau, and it's not just Trudeau, it's the CPC, it's all the established politicians are in cahoots with the higher ups and the higher agenda, let that be the WEF, George Soros, UN, whatever it is, to completely destroy society and have complete control. And the destruction of the family is that final brick in the wall that needs to be taken out, because that is the cornerstone of a strong society. Strong family equals strong society. And we've seen this before. We've seen it in Eastern Europe. We lived it in Eastern Europe. You see, in Eastern Europe, what they did is they had government agents become teachers, fill positions, high positions within the school, within government, and they became principals, etc., and ensured that the state agenda, the propaganda, was being taught properly. And so even if there were teachers that did not agree, they had to teach this propaganda and ensure this propaganda was getting into the schools and getting passed on to the kids, so that they understood that being a good little Marxist, you will be a good little citizen, and you will basically worship the state, and the state owns you. That's exactly what happened. So they implanted the seed of doubt and mistrust towards the parents. They were told that if their parents disagreed with something, that it's okay to make sure that they ratted on them, they quote unquote tattletaled on them, that they were handed over to the state, and these kids were then rewarded handsomely, whatever there was. But we knew then that they became good little citizens of the state, and they became property of the state. So the Marxist states felt that, or the ideology was that children were property of the state. And this is where we're getting to here too. Put a wedge in between the seeds of doubt in the family, wedge between parents and child, mother and father, or the wedge between father, son, mother and daughter, and even between the siblings. Make sure that the destruction of the family, that cornerstone, is done, so then the society will be able to be controlled much easier when families are taken apart and children become properties of the state. This is what we're protesting. We don't want the state in the classroom. We don't want that divisive ideology to be put in there. We've seen Trudeau since day one. What has he done? Nothing but politics of divisiveness and division, based on gender, based on race, based on religion, based on sexuality, all of this, just to create division, unease, and be able to conquer our society and control it, manipulate it. And this is what's happening with our kids. But people are catching on, and this was great. This is great to see. People are starting to understand that this is more than just a curriculum. This is an agenda, a big agenda, an agenda that's bigger than us, an agenda that's coming from a top down and is being pushed upon us and the kids, and especially the kids. And now we need to rise up and say, enough is enough. Leave the kids alone. We will decide. Parents will decide what our kids can and cannot watch, listen, read. We will teach the kids when we feel it's right. We know our kids. They don't belong to the teachers. They don't belong to the schools. They don't belong to the unions or the trustees. Nobody. And unions and school boards, etc., they're all in. Even if there may be teachers who don't agree with it, they go along with it because they're afraid to speak up. They're afraid to lose their jobs. They're afraid of being sanctioned. That's why you don't hear many teachers speak up. And those who do, or trustees who do, a la Linda Stone, we see what happens. They're censored, they're silenced, they're reprimanded. My oh my, is that not a Marxist thing to do? Again, my family's seen it before. They've lived it, we've seen it in Eastern Europe. And it's now here in Canada. And we have to put a stop to it. So, takeaway, things are changing. People are waking up and understanding. But there are two other very important takeaways from this rally that we had yesterday, or the protest that we had yesterday. Number one, Pierre Poilievre and the CPC, their members, where were they? Were they at the rallies? Were they at the protests? Did they say anything? No. And now we know that they were silenced. PP specifically said not to engage, not to talk to media, not to comment, not to do anything. And even Pierre, yesterday, all he did was talk about housing and nothing about the protest, nothing about parental rights, nothing about protecting children from being sexualized and becoming sexual objects and being initiated into sexuality when they don't need to. Nothing. Silence. And people will come, well, come on. They voted on parental rights at the convention. Well, to a degree. It's non-binding. And now we see that to him, not important. What's important? Polls. He follows polls. He doesn't follow values. To him, values are what the polls tell him his values are. He doesn't have real values. He flip-flops. He's a turncoat. Again, nothing has changed in the CPC. They are one and the same. In bed with the Liberals and in the NDP, they are the same. They're all one and the same. They're all bought and paid for by the WEF, by George Soros. They're all in on the UN and globalism. It's all the same. Zero values, zero integrity. Is this the type of people we want? We need to do politics different. We can't have politicians going around, wow, it's a political strategy, keep quiet, see, we don't want to be labeled homophobes. If you're worried about that, if you're worried about the media and to such a degree, really, you are a chicken, you are a coward, you have no integrity. Zero. This man is showing us day in and day out that the CPC has not changed, that they are a bunch of cowards. And all they care about is polls. They don't care about integrity. They don't care about Canadians. They don't care about children. They don't care about parents. They don't care. All they care about is power. And they want to get in for money. And that's all they care about, is fulfilling that agenda. All of it. So that's takeaway number one. Pierre, you suck. Number two, this is probably a very interesting one. Well, basically, Trudeau has cornered himself. Own goal, as we would say in soccer. As we know, we have, over the years, Trudeau has ridden the horse of Islamophobia. He has said and called everybody Islamophobe if they don't agree with something, if they didn't agree with certain policies, Islamophobia. He's called Islamophobia everywhere, even when it didn't exist and it hasn't existed. He just says Islamophobe. If you don't agree with something, you're a homophobe, transphobe, Islamophobe, you hate, etc., etc., etc. Well, I'd like to see what he's going to do now, because guess what? The 1 million March for Children organizers, Muslims. So, is he going to call Muslims bigots, homophobes, transphobes? He's going to call them fascists, misogynists, ultra right wing, etc., etc. How is he going to get out of this one? Because guess what? The tides are turning. Muslims are understanding that they are being used by politicians, especially the Liberals and the NDP. But let's throw Pierre in there as well, because they're all in one in the same party, one in the same home, all in one bed. Being used by politicians for a vote. And that's it. And when it's convenient, let's pull out the Muslim card, let's call it Islamophobia, and then nobody can say anything and we win. Now what's going to happen? You're going to call Muslims bigots, you're going to call them misogynists, you're going to call them homophobe, transphobes, or whatever you want to call it, ultra right wing, what is it they call Christians? Christo-fascists. So you're going to call them Islamofascists? Is that the story? Is that how the game works? How's that going to work out for you now? And I encourage all my Muslim brothers and sisters, when somebody calls you a bigot, because they will, when they start calling you misogynist, because they will, when they call you whatever name they come up with, use the anti-Islamophobe clause and go after them. It's time. It's time to do this. It's time to have them taste their own medicine. The hate has to stop. And using people and using religious groups, sexual groups, gender group, whatever you want, needs to stop for gain. We're either all Canadian or we're in trouble. The PPC is there and advocates for each and every individual Canadian. We don't care about your sexuality. We don't care about your religion. You're either Canadian or not. And there's room in this country for all of you and for all of us. Just leave our kids alone. Parents have rights, inherent rights as parents. We stick by our values. We follow values and not polls like the Conservatives. And everybody has a spot in this country. If you want Canada to succeed, and if you want real equality and real change in this country, there's only one party to vote for, and that's the PPC. Keep following us, become a member, donate so that we can continue our fight for each and every Canadian, and follow me. I'll be with you once again shortly. Bye for now.